Thank you everyone for coming. It's a pleasure to be speaking here. Could you just switch back? Could you click back onto the presentation? I think you've clicked off it, which is why I'm not going up and down. Let me see. There we go. Marvelous. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. So in case you don't know who I am, my name is Michael Marshall. I'm the president of the Merseyside Skeptic Society. So we set up in Liverpool in 2009, and we've been running events and doing various other bits of unusual activism and undercover investigation work and various bits and bobs in the many, many years it's been since then. Part of the stuff that we do, we have a couple of podcasts that we do, one called Skeptics with a K, another one called Be Reasonable. And Be Reasonable is this weird thing that I do where each month I talk to somebody I completely disagree with. But rather than getting into what would be like a Facebook argument with them, where I'm telling them how wrong they are and how stupid they are and how gullible any of these things, instead I try to just have a polite conversation and try to listen to what it is that they think and how did they get there. And I really try to understand what was the journey to this belief that the rest of us would look at and think that can't possibly be true. And so I've talked to people who believe all manner of things, that there are pterosaurs still flying around in America right now, that we can live without food or water. There was a lady who was saying that she could live without eating or drinking. She hadn't been doing it for very long, only for a day or two by the time I spoke to her, but she was absolutely committed to the idea for a little while. There's a guy who believed that humans were a result of a hybridization program involving pigs and monkeys. And so that's where we all came from, according to this guy. And instead of telling him that this is ridiculous, that can't possibly be true, I try to hear him out and understand how can I get him to kind of reflect on his own beliefs. And so I've been doing that for a while. I'm also editor of the Skeptic magazine, which also kind of facilitates some of the investigative work that I do, and I work full time as an investigator for a charity called the Good Thinking Society. So that's kind of like my background is all these kind of weird overlapping projects, all centered around critical thinking, but also with an idea of we need to understand people we disagree with and understand ideas we disagree with, because that makes us more effective at disagreeing with them and unhooking them and various things like that. And so I actually spent a long time prior to my work on the anti-vaccination movement looking at the flat earth movement. It was something I first came across in, I think, about 2014, 2015, when not many people had heard about it. And I gave a whole talk. I toured around the country talking about my experiences in spending time with flat earthers. I went to the Flat Earth Convention for 2 days in Birmingham with 200 people who think the world is flat, just to listen and understand why do they think these things, what leads them to those positions, and what might be going on to bring so many people to believe in something so patently false. One of the greatest weekends I've ever spent in my life in this hotel filled with flat earthers. And I learned a couple of things from that, and I gave an entire talk about what I learned from it. But the biggest take home for me, there's a couple really. One, I think I learned that of the people I found in the flat earth movement, so many of them would start their story by saying that they went through a moment of crisis. A relationship breakdown, or someone in their family passed away, or they had a period of ill health or a period of mental ill health, or something happened in their life that meant that the rules by which they normally live and the things that are normal to them suddenly changed, and they felt unmoored and unanchored. And then they found the truth about the flat earth. And it struck me that people who are going through these crises are more likely to reach out for answers as to why their lives aren't working the way that they hope that they would. And so that's one of the take-home messages I got from the flat earth movement. But the other thing I found was that the number of people there who talked about the various ideas that they held, they didn't just talk about the flat earth. They actually held all these other non-mainstream ideas as well. It's just that the flat earth was the most visible one of them. And I remember talking to a Times journalist at the weekend, saying, if you really want to report this, you could report it as you want to about how silly all these people are. But if you really want to know what's going on, go and talk to that couple over there who've got a baby and ask them, is that baby vaccinated? Are they going to vaccinate that kid? If that kid took ill, would they take him to the hospital and get some of that big pharma medicine that they say is so evil? Or would they do something else? Would they go to the guy who's on stage talking about how the world is flat, but also we can cure all disease by drinking urine? You know, these people were already in a space where they were primed to believe in unusual ideas that actually had some dangerous components. And when I wrote about this, I wrote about it for The Guardian and for Gizmodo at the time. And I said, the thing that worries me about this movement is that they're primed to accept a lot of very potentially harmful big ideas, and it will only take the right match to come along and set this entire tinderbox alight. And then COVID happened. And you can imagine what happened to the people who were attracted to the flat earth movement when all of life completely changed for all of us for a period of time at least, and everything got unanchored and unmoored, and they all became part of various different anti-vax movements. So that's kind of the background to how I came to really care about this stuff and find myself into this stuff. But how I came to look at this particular aspect of the anti-vax movement was I first saw stickers like this. I know that I asked earlier, some of you have seen these stickers before. These are on lampposts down by the River Mersey, not far from where I live in St Michael's, Liverpool. A friend took these pictures and said, have you seen these? These are popping up everywhere. And basically every lamppost along the front had one of these stickers on, all from the same group, all in a very similar style. You can see they've all got the same, the white and black kind of design, that kind of broken kind of font, always in the same font. And all the rhetoric, all the language, all the ideas are pitched in the same kind of way to hit you first in your gut and not in your reason, not in your logic. It's aiming at, isn't this all strange? Isn't this all suddenly insecure for all of us? And we need to question this. So you can see it's saying things like, I hope you enjoy week 271 of 3 weeks to flatten the curve. So we should undermine the mainstream narrative. You can cure the virus by turning off your television. That there isn't really a virus. It doesn't really exist. It's a construct of the media and of the government. And these are all put up by a group called the White Rose. And the White Rose really are this kind of decentralized COVID conspiracy movement. A lot of people ask me, who's in charge of this group? Who started this group? And I don't think anybody is actually in charge. It really does feel like an organic grassroots thing, because people go along and start designing these stickers. They put them up on lampposts. Other people see them, other people join the group and start designing their own stickers. And the whole thing grew, not just in Liverpool, not just in the UK, but all around the world. And they all have the same kind of themes. COVID isn't real, rather. Masks don't work. Masks are dangerous for us. The vaccine is dangerous for us. The stickers saying the vaccine is dangerous for us were appearing in like July 2020. Long before anybody got a sniff of a vaccine, they were already saying the vaccine is the real problem here. And every one of those stickers has at the bottom of it either a web address to their Telegram channel, and I'll talk about Telegram in a moment, or a QR code taking you directly there. So you could just scan any one of these stickers and go straight into their messaging app. And QR codes, it strikes me that QR codes were the real winner of the pandemic. If we have to follow the money, QR codes were dead in the water before the pandemic, and then suddenly everyone's got QR codes. So maybe if we're going to be conspiracists, we think about that. I'm joking, that's not true. But yeah, everybody who's in the group is encouraged to go off and print their own stickers and start distributing them and to wake more people up, and so the whole thing will spread. They call themselves the White Rose, and that's because that name has a historic precedent. It goes back to the White Rose anti-Nazi movement in Munich, which is a group of student protesters in Munich who tried to undermine people's acceptance of the Nazi narrative by leaving graffiti around Munich and leaving leaflets around Munich to ask people important questions that would make them stop and think about what their government at the time was doing. And the students were involved were Sophie Scholl, Hans Scholl, Alexander Schmorell. There was a couple of others too. And they started in June 1942, but by February 1943, the whole movement had been brought to an end because they were all captured by the Gestapo, and I think they were all executed, or the majority of them were executed. And this is a monument to, a tribute to the White Rose in Munich, which is these kind of leaflets in brass on the floor as like a permanent monument to the heroism and the bravery of these students to stand up to such a vicious regime. But this is the legacy that the modern White Rose anti-vax movements thinks that they're inheriting, that they are the natural heirs to those people standing up to fascism. And the fascism that they believe they're standing up to was the public health messaging we were getting during the pandemic. So as I say, all of the stickers share the same design. They're designed to be as low effort, low cost as possible, low design to create. So you can create them en masse, create new narratives en masse, come up with new ideas en masse. Anybody in the group can suggest ideas for a sticker. And if it's accepted, it'll be added into the pack and people will start sharing it. So it'll really kind of escalate quite quickly. It doesn't need much organization or coordination in order for it to really spread and ironically viral. And when you get a pack of the stickers, so I signed up for their Telegram, I downloaded a pack of their stickers, and I went through all the different designs that they've got. And I even had them post me some of their stickers to my house, which you'll learn later was possibly not a very good idea, but I normally carry on a pack of stickers that was mailed to me by a local member of the White Rose. But you find that the messages that are on these stickers fall broadly into several categories. So there's the obvious one of there isn't a virus. COVID isn't real, it's all a big hoax, there's no pandemic. Your own government is waging psychological warfare on you. So it's this emotive language designed to hit you in your fears, hit you in your gut. But obviously it doesn't stand up to scrutiny, it doesn't stand up to logic, because it isn't your own government that's waging psychological war, because every government in the world, barring possibly North Korea, agreed that this was happening. So it would have to be everybody in the world has agreed that this narrative is true. It's not your own government, it's everybody. I think even North Korea eventually succumbed to their first case of COVID, like last year or something like that, if you believe their propaganda. So the idea that there isn't a virus, that all of this is just you being lied to by the government. And they, again, pitch things at a gut level, pitch things at your stomach first and foremost, saying that a genuinely deadly pandemic wouldn't require a 24/7 government and corporate media fear-mongering campaign to make you believe that it's real. So the fact that the telly keeps covering this pandemic is proof that it's not true. Now, again, it appeals to your sense of this isn't normal, but it doesn't stand up to logical scrutiny. And when I've talked to anti-vaxxers about messages like this, I've said, well, what would a real pandemic look like? If there really was a pandemic, wouldn't the newspapers cover that pretty often? Wouldn't it be on the telly all the time? Wouldn't the governments be talking about it? So you can't distinguish based on the amount of coverage whether a pandemic is real or not. But this isn't designed to stand up to that level of scrutiny. It's just designed to catch you in a moment of passing by, try and hit you in a weak spot, hit you in an emotive spot. A massive thank you to the unsung heroes who clear the piles of dead bodies from the street each night. Fundamentally misunderstanding how people die from COVID, because people don't drop dead in the streets, they die on ventilators in isolated wards, and we don't get to see them because they've got a highly communicable disease. So obviously they're kept away from the majority of people. And if anybody had anybody hospitalized during the pandemic, they'll know it was incredibly hard. You couldn't go and see them because it was so contagious. So they're fundamentally not understanding the reality or even the official version of the story that they're rejecting. They're rejecting it based on their own gut instincts, but not first understanding what it is that they disagree with. And just you can see it kind of stacked up in this kind of emotive language to try and hit people as emotionally as possible. Then you had messages like, okay, yes, there is a virus, but actually masks are much worse than that. So these ones don't deny the existence of the virus, even though the previous sticker in the pack did. Even though you'll be people walking down the streets will be putting up one sticker saying the virus is real, and then the next sticker saying, well, the virus is real, but the masks are even worse. And there is no sense of contradiction in there, because this is all just about rejecting the mainstream narrative. It's not about creating a coherent worldview. It's about rejecting what everyone else is saying. So, if face masks work, why are the businesses closed? If they don't work, why are we being forced to wear them? Again, it feels like a very gut instinct thing to be questioning. What it's missing is face masks don't have to be 100% effective for them to be useful. If a face mask could stop 50% of transmission, you'll slow the virus down. And every little bit that we can do to reduce the amount of our chances of getting the virus is quite useful. So it's this black and white thinking. The font is black and white, but the logic is also black and white. It's all or nothing. There is no nuance in here. When in reality, the world exists in these shades of grey and nuances, that it's worth doing something to reduce your risk. And if you do enough things to reduce your risk will be fairly minimal, hopefully. They really just don't like masks. A lot of them just depict people who were wearing masks as looking ridiculous, calling them a muzzle, saying how silly you look. And we all felt silly wearing masks, at least to begin with. But that doesn't mean that masks don't work. Just because you feel silly in them doesn't mean that it's not effective. But really, this was just kind of how they felt in them. Saying here, men in 1941 facing almost certain death, there they are standing all masculine and manly with a square cut jaw. Whereas men in 2021 facing a 99.9% recovery rate, they're wearing a mask and crying. Obviously, this is wrong for lots of different reasons. They're trying to tie this into a sense of your own masculinity. Personally, my masculinity isn't so fragile that it's undermined by wearing a bit of cloth on my face. But also what they're missing here is what the threat is. The threat in 1941 wasn't something airborne. It was bullets, which is why he's wearing a helmet to deflect bullets. If it was something airborne, he would have been wearing a gas mask like they were in the trenches when they were gas attacks. So they did give them things to prevent them from inhaling things that were dangerous. But again, you're not meant to think about it at this level. You're not meant to actually pause and reflect on the reality of what the situation is. You're meant to just accept this as a rhetoric, as an emotional argument. There's others. Well, okay, the virus is real, but it's the vaccine that's particularly bad. We see that one too. So, again, if vaccinated people are a threat, does that mean that the vaccine doesn't work? It's all or nothing again. It's not a sense that if the vaccine reduces your chances of getting the disease by 70% and reduces your chance of being hospitalized if you do get it by 60, 80, 70, whatever percent, that those things don't matter. It has to be 100% effective or it's completely useless. It's entirely binary when that's not how the world works. That's not how medicine works. It's not how viruses work. But this isn't designed to stand up to that kind of scrutiny. You see this guy here, the classic meme of not sure which button to press. Do we press the button saying we need to destroy the lives of 99.9% of the population to protect the 0.1% who are vulnerable? Or do we press the if 0.1% of vaccine recipients die from the vaccine, it's a tiny irrelevant percentage? It's trying to argue that these are two fundamentally incompatible ideas that are being pushed at you by the government at the same time. And that's what this kind of sarcastic meme is doing. Now, obviously, that's not true. But actually, even if we accepted those numbers at face value, and the numbers are incorrect, but even if we accepted their numbers at face value, we can actually see that it's not quite as straightforward as that. So at the time of writing this, so this was like March 2022, the last time I did these figures, there have been 20 million coronavirus cases in the UK, 163,000 deaths, which means for every 1 million people who live in this country, not necessarily who got COVID, but everybody who lives in this country, 2,400 people died of COVID, which is a huge number. For every 1 million, more than almost 2,500 people, which means the country had a COVID survival rate of 99.76%. That's not if you got it, it's just the country, the whole population as a whole. How does that compare with the vaccine? They're saying it's the same kind of number for the vaccine. Well, actually, if we accept their number for the number of deaths, which is this yellow card number, there were 1,800 deaths at the time of writing this, out of 141 million doses, which actually gives the vaccine a survivability rate of 99.9987% by their figures alone. If we accept the anti-vax figures, even their own argument suggests we should be getting vaccinated. But of course, these numbers aren't even reflective of reality, because that yellow card system is not people who died because of the vaccine, it's people who died after being vaccinated. If you had cancer and you were vaccinated and you died of cancer, you'd count as that. And the whole point of the yellow card is if we give somebody a medicine we've not given out before, we don't know what unusual side effects to look out for. So we just record every single thing that happens to everyone. We don't take individual cases, but if we look at thousands and thousands of people, some patterns might emerge. Maybe there are a lot of people being hit by cars because this thing robs you of your peripheral vision. A drug narrows your peripheral vision. That's the kind of thing you couldn't necessarily notice in a clinical trial, but it might come out in large numbers of data. It doesn't mean that there's a direct cause for everyone who dies and is in that yellow card, that they were directly dying as a result of it. So the number is actually drastically lower than 1,800. It's than orders of tens rather than thousands. You see stickers like this, this sticker is removable. The gene-altering mRNA vaccine, they aren't. This is wrong for two reasons. First of all, the vaccine does not alter your genes. It altered the genes of a spike protein on the vaccine, on the virus. It injects that into you. Your body learns how to fight it, and then it knows what it's looking for the next time it comes across that spike protein. So it's wrong for that reason. The other reason this sticker is removable is that anybody who's tried to remove the other reason this sticker is not true is that anybody who's tried to remove one of these stickers will find out it's actually not as removable as this sticker would make out. You've really got to work to take them down. They rip and all sorts. So it's wrong for two reasons. We see a lot of conspiracy mongering in the stickers. They really dislike Bill Gates. Bill Gates is the bad guy, your body, my choice. Here he is looking sinister and evil. They think he is personally in charge of the entire world's vaccine program because he spends some money giving that money to epidemiologists and virologists who then create vaccines and distribute them in the third world. But you can see here, they've got this quote. The world today has 6.8 billion people. If we do a really great job on new vaccines, we could lower that by 10 to 15%. This sounds an incredibly scary thing. The idea that Bill Gates wants to lower the world's population by 10%. He's talking about killing at least 680 million people at that point. Maybe even more than that, 10 to 15%. This sounds incredibly worrying. Did Bill Gates say that? And he did say that. But those dots, those ellipses here are incredibly important, because what he actually said was, The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. And if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by 10 to 15%. He's talking about lowering the increase from 6.8 to 9. Those different, that 2.2. He's talking about lowering that so it doesn't have to go up as high as that. And he's talking about doing that through giving people access to reproductive healthcare, lowering infant mortality, spreading education around the world, especially amongst women in developing countries. That's one of the things that lowers the increase in birth rate, is giving women access to reproductive healthcare and education. And so they're able to have more empowered lives. So that's what he's talking about. He's not talking about killing 700 million people. He's talking about lowering the number of extra births that they're going to be, which is, a goal, is a useful goal. Now, this to me, I think, is interesting because the person who designed that sticker had to have removed all the bits of context that tell you what Bill Gates actually said to manipulate it, to make it look as evil as possible. So the this sticker has to at some point know that they're lying, because their quote is not the same as what he actually said. And I gave this talk in Glasgow, and there were all anti-vaxxers in the audience, and they would not accept this point. They would say, no, but Bill Gates did say that quote. So he did, but you've mangled it to a point where it's meaningless. I could say, if I said I am not about to kill someone, and you quoted me and took the not out, you've fundamentally changed what I'm about to do. It's not my fault that you've distorted my words and things. We get a lot of kind of this idea of they're standing up to fascism. So people in 1940s Germany didn't realize they'd been brainwashed by the media and government either. They really see themselves as the heirs to the White Rose, that they're standing up to the tyranny of public health, really. We say, I'll skip that one. I said I'll skip that one. There we go. We see all manner of different conspiracy theories in here too. So this is the idea that first it was you're not allowed in places unless you're wearing a mask. Then it'll be you're not allowed in places unless you're vaccinated. And then it'll be you're not allowed anywhere unless you're microchipped, so they can track you at all times. This obviously is not true. It's painting a picture of a totalitarian hellscape that was never on the cards and didn't emerge. In fact, we never even got to the point where it was no vax, no entry. The idea of there being vaccine passports that would control your every movement never came through. That wasn't something the government did. So the idea that we're heading towards total enslavement is nonsense. We see the idea of resist the new normal, resist the Great Reset, the idea that World Economic Forum policy, which has been used as a shorthand for totalitarian control of the world, and resist the New World Order. The idea that actually the governments are all working together behind the scenes and pretending to be different governments when they're all run by the same people. These are all in the conspiracy buffet that you see and you get part of once you join the White Rose. Nothing can stop the Great Awakening of humanity. This to me is an important one because this is a little bit of a dog whistle phrase. Not everyone will recognize the Great Awakening. But the Great Awakening is the idea in the QAnon conspiracy theory that, yes, there is this horrible cabal of lizard elites who scare babies and then drink their blood so they can live forever. That's a real thing, according to this idea. And as soon as everybody recognizes that and accepts it, there'll be a Great Awakening of humanity, and we can stand up to these horrible elites. So the Great Awakening is what the QAnon movement is trying to get to, the point where we all accept that QAnon is true. So this is a QAnon message buried in amongst all the anti-vax stuff, and we'll see more and more of that. The idea that we need to be worried about big pharma enslavement and big brother surveillance and constant data collection. Some of these things I agree with, but they're all saying this is a formidable weapon of population control. That this is all just a way of trying to keep us in our little, that 5G is trying to keep us in our little bubble. Saying that the chemicals being sprayed in the air, that there is no such thing as natural weather anymore, that the government are controlling the weather. This is all in there, these chemtrail ideas. See things like this, if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. I think this is ironic from the people who are sticking a sticker on every single lamppost that you see in order to stop you, questioning what you're seeing. Live in fear, it makes you easy to control, says the people who say that Bill Gates is trying to kill 680 million people. Who's trying to bring the fear here? Where am I going with this? That's a blank page. No, I'll skip that one. I thought I'd taken these ones out. Sorry, I've got, and this is the last one I'll say of the stickers that I think is important. Years from now, people look back at this time and many will hang their heads in shame as they remember the evil they went along with and the heroes they ridiculed. And this, to me, I think is incredibly ironic when I think of the videos I saw of people going into hospital wards and yelling at nurses to say that you're liars, you're not really treating anyone, you're all just taking time off. When these were healthcare workers who'd given up huge parts of their lives and even endangered their health by being on the front line of this thing. And so the idea that people hang their heads in shame and remember the evil they went along with and the heroes they ridiculed, unfortunately, I don't think people will. I don't think the people who did ridicule those heroes will ever really realize it. And the other thing that they always try and do is they try and pry you away from the mainstream narrative however they can. So don't watch the news, don't read the newspapers, stay away from the BBC. The BBC is evil. I don't know if you've ever seen any of the protests that have been happening all around the country where people put these stickers on the outside of the BBC buildings in various parts of the country because the BBC is the tool of the New World Order, according to these movements. So instead, you've got to go for their sources of media, the places where they spread their messaging. These are the only places you can trust. You can't trust journalists. You have to trust alternative journalists in places like UK Column or the Light Paper. And the Light Paper is really important to them. Has anyone seen copies of the Light Paper? They're sort of handed out in the park by people. The Light Paper is a newspaper put together and handed out for free that consists entirely of anti-vaxx, conspiracism, and other types of conspiracism. So you can see here, there's the White Rose writing articles for the Light Paper. As you can see, the 1,400 deaths from the COVID injections, that's the yellow card data, where they were taking that at face value and assuming that meant that everyone who died in the yellow card data died because of the injection. But you can see other things that appear in the Light Paper from, I think there's like 2 different issues, but masks are more harmful than they are good. So the idea that masks are useless. You have here that COVID is just a successful rebranding of the flu, because when we all social distanced and stopped congregating, flu numbers went down, but COVID numbers went up. So they would say, well, that's proof then that you just took the flu and then give a new name and called it COVID, and that's what's really happening here. Now, I would argue that we don't normally spend as much time distancing ourselves and wearing masks and hand sanitizing and working from home to avoid the flu. And so those measures actually prevented the spread of the flu quite effectively. It didn't prevent COVID quite as effectively because COVID's even more transmissible. And here's a Canadian professor saying that the spike protein in the vaccine is a toxin and is pathogenic, which is not true. And he's not a professor of virology or anyone with any expertise in those areas. But it's not just COVID misinformation in this newspaper. You've got climate change misinformation there. You've got in the middle the idea that the conspiracy theory about the Clinton family, that they've got a body count of all the people they killed on the way into power. It's a well-known conspiracy theory. Here it is in the Light Paper. And you see all sorts of adverts to other unusual ideas or sources of misinformation. So this is David Icke's YouTube channel, or his video channel there, appearing quite prominently. And this here, this forced vaccine or freedom, save us now. This is an anti-5G campaign that's arguing that 5G is actually a biological weapon designed to reduce the population. And I'll come back to this campaign in a moment. But there it is advertised, the genocide agenda in the Light Paper. Now, the Light Paper interests me for a couple of reasons. First is that I never, you can't go anywhere amongst circles without coming across issues in the Light Paper anymore. When I give a talk in Glasgow, people turned up at the talk to distribute copies of the Light Paper. The exact copy that I showed you, in fact, I brought a copy with me to the Glasgow talk. I went through it and showed how nonsense it was. And then outside, people have brought that exact issue to give away, which wasn't ideal for them. But the other reason it really interests me is that I know the editor of the Light Paper. I've known him for a few years. He's a guy called Darren Nesbitt, and I met him because he was one of the UK's leading flat earthers. This was him when he was on This Morning with Phil and Holly talking about the flat earth. And he was one of the main speakers at the Flat Earth convention that I went to in Birmingham that time. And I interviewed him for my show in 2018 about the flat earth. And then in between 2018 and 2021, he's founded the Light Paper. He's now one of the leading figures in the anti-vax movement. If you saw any of the footage of people on anti-vax rallies and big marches, they were singing songs like "We are, we are the 99%." You can stick the New World Order up your arse. Those were songs that Darren Nesbitt wrote. So it's really interesting to me to see him move through flat Earth conspiracism into QAnon conspiracism into COVID conspiracism. And I'd argue he's not the only person who's made that journey. When the flat earth thing started to die down, people didn't get off the conspiracy train, they just switched tracks. And now they're believing in other things, and they've continued to switch tracks and accumulate people along the way. So people start handing out light papers in town. People in Liverpool were even doing these big marches. You can see here, there's a guy putting white rose stickers all over a police car. Although I'm in their chat channels at the time, and he said he wasn't. What he was doing, he was a concerned citizen taking all those horrible stickers off that nice police car. You can believe which of those narratives you like. But this is the march through Liverpool city centre, through the shopping centre. And you can see there lots of people all close together, but holding signs WWG1, WGA. And Q, well, Q is from QAnon. That other one is where we go one, we go all, the slogan of QAnon. So the idea that there is this elite cabal of baby blood drinking Democrats in America led by Hillary Clinton who are going to be brought down by Donald Trump, which is the QAnon idea, has made it to Liverpool. And I have no idea why that resonates, why that would resonate with people in the UK, why we would care that Donald Trump is about to come and save us all from the baby blood drinkers. The only reason, I think, is that their sources of misinformation are inherently American in their origin. So once you're accepting conspiracy theory, you're much more open to accepting all manner of conspiracy theory. The groups even attend they set up these protests on the side of the street where they hold up yellow cards to try and wake up motorists, to ask them these same kind of gut level rhetoric questions. Did you know about all the people who've had side effects of the vaccine? Did you know how many side effects there are? What they don't say is that the vast majority of those side effects in the yellow card scheme are things like sore arm or a swollen lymph node or a headache, things that just go away. We even have an MP standing up in Parliament, unable to understand that too. Andrew Bridgen given a speech in Parliament several times, October and December, saying about how all the people are getting these horrible side effects. Even the studies he cited are saying the side effects are headaches and a sore arm and swollen lymph nodes. So just the big scary number, but not interrogating the information to the same level. But there they are trying to sort of wake up the people. And so that's one of the big things that they were doing during the anti-vax movement. But the largest part of what they did, what the anti-vax movement was doing during the pandemic, was gathering on Telegram. Now, Telegram is a messaging app that's like several different messaging apps rolled together, because you can have one-to-one conversations like you're texting your friends, but you can also set up as a page like a newspaper and just put out articles that people can respond to, but they don't talk to one another. Or you can set up as a group like this group might, where everybody can talk to anybody at any given time. And Telegram is all those things at once. And I think the fact that there's an aspect of its technology that I think makes it the perfect dissemination vehicle for misinformation, especially conspiracist misinformation, because you can have somebody set up as an authoritative conspiracy theorist spreading their information, and at the touch of a button, everybody who follows them can share that post to every single person they know on Telegram, to every group, to every individual, and they can share it, and they can share it, and they can share it. So it's very, very efficient at getting a message out, especially if that message is kind of emotive and designed to kind of trigger people's emotional response. And every single time you hit forward on a message, it includes a link to the origin. So you can, at any point in that message, click and be joined to the group that it started off at. So you can always find its way back to its original source, which means the groups that start sharing these messages quickly accumulate a lot of followers. But it also means that groups that want to accumulate a lot of followers know they can just start sharing these messages. And these messages are going to go viral, and people are going to start jumping on board their particular train. And this is something I spent a lot of time during back end of 2020, all the way through 2021, possibly too much of 2022 as well. I shouldn't spend as much time on Telegram in these spaces as I do. But I joined the White Rose. From that little QR code at the bottom of one of the stickers at the end of my street, I joined the White Rose. When I joined, it had 52,000 subscribers, and the White Rose is set up as a page, which means it will put out posts and people can't talk to one another. They can only comment in those posts. And it always does the same thing. It will either post a picture of the sticker somewhere in the world to show that other people are doing this, so you should too. Or it'll post a zip file of all the latest designs, so it's really easy for you to go away, download them, and start doing stuff with them. Or it'll post instructions on how to print your own stickers, right down to exactly which label printer you should buy. You should go out and buy the Brother Q something something label printer, which is exactly the right size and quite cheap, and they would send links off to them. I don't know how many printers Brother shifted as a result of the White Rose. They always say follow the money in those things, and I don't know if that means that this is all orchestrated by Big Brother. It may well be Big Brother. But that's what the White Rose main channel does. And the other thing it does is post the Telegram addresses, the links to local groups where you can actually find people on your doorstep who are doing this and start talking to them. And that's all the main channel would do. But the second you start commenting on any of those posts, you're immediately automatically added to another channel, which is a chat channel, which is a group that anyone can say anything to anyone. And sometimes those messages on there are about the original post, and sometimes it's just anything that people think would be interesting to people who are in the White Rose. And so you get a lot of cross-posting of other conspiracy theory stuff in there, a lot of back and forth of conversations in there. Yeah, and so a lot of people cross-posting into there, and you can see they're talking about things like how you make your own natural hydroxychloroquine. Hydroxychloroquine was one of the fake cures that was suggested as being a cure for COVID, but just going for the fake one isn't good enough. You've got to make your own fake one out of, I think it was lime juice and lemon juice or something else like that. So there's all manner of things. You can see the White Rose stickers in there too. In the White Rose chat, when I joined it, there was like 12,000 members. You can see all manner of different things they believe in. So here they are talking about ivermectin, the other miracle cure that was suggested for COVID, and where you can get your ivermectin and who's promoting it most efficiently. A lot of stuff on miracle mineral supplement in there. For anyone who doesn't know miracle mineral supplement, it's a form of industrial bleach, chlorine dioxide, activated chlorine dioxide, which is sold as a miracle cure for absolutely anything. I first found it when people with Crohn's disease were taking it to cure their Crohn's disease, and were talking about how they were throwing up as a result, and they were vomiting blood as a result. And you had other sufferers saying, if you're vomiting blood, that it's working. That's the toxins leaving your body. Incredibly horrible stuff. I actually interviewed the founder of this particular incredibly deadly thing on my podcast, a guy called Jim Humble, who I think is probably responsible for thousands, if not tens of thousands of deaths because of the fact that he's pushed this to so many people with cancer and AIDS and malaria and everything. And it struck me midway through the conversation that the guy I'm on the phone to has killed at least thousands of people, if not more than that. It's a very strange thing to strike you in a phone conversation. But I think he genuinely believes it. I think he fundamentally, wholeheartedly believes he's doing right, but that means he can do enormous harm in doing so. I said it posted all the local channels as well. So these are all the different channels that were available in the UK. So I joined the Merseyside one. They had all ones in America and other countries too. I joined a couple of these, but I joined Merseyside in particular. And so when I joined the Merseyside one, there was only 228 members. So much, much smaller now, which means anybody who's active in there regularly, you see their names again and again, which means they start to feel like a community. Oh, there's Dave again. So you start to feel like you know these people, you're building bonds with these people. And I think that's really important at a time when we all lost our bonds. We all lost our communities because we couldn't go out and hang out with our friends. But we can make our new friends online who agree with us. And now we're going to be spending a lot of time in Telegram talking to them because we can't go out and our businesses are closed. So we're going to spend our time online and spend more and more time in these channels where you see the same people posting stuff. You see cross posts and forwarded posts from other channels appearing there a lot. One thing you'll see that's quite interesting is you'll see multiple people posting the same thing at different times because they've stumbled across it from somewhere else in their network, their ecosystem. But the fact that you see the same thing multiple times starts to feel like it's consensus when it's not. It's just an echo. It's just it started here and it's pinged around the internet and come back in these different places. But it feels like you're hearing it again and again. So it feels like it's consensus, and it really isn't. It's just the same thing. These are the group that would organise protests in the country, in the city rather, and distribute light paper. You can see some of the things they were posting here. This is a guy saying that with COVID, the devil is overplaying his hand, this priest. This guy is onto the satanic qualities of the COVID scam. So they don't mean the devil metaphorically. They don't mean like some evil organisation. They mean literally the Satan from the Bible created COVID and is deliberately doing it. And these are kind of messages that were spreading around. When I joined the White Rose Merseyside, I was automatically joined to another group that I didn't know about, that I didn't seek out, but someone just added me, because you can just add your friends to a group, and unless they decide to walk away, they're in that group now. And I think it's really important because every group you're in, you get a little notification every time there's a message. So the more groups you're in, the more notifications you get. So that number starts really, really racking up, and it hits that little urge that you have to clear your notifications, to clear your inbox. Well, I'm going to read all the messages in this channel. Oh, now there's some in this channel. Now there's some in this channel. Oh, now the first one has a load of messages in again. So the more groups you're in, the more time you spend on Telegram, and the more time you spend on Telegram, the more time you spend on Telegram. And it wasn't just on COVID. So about how to avoid paying your TV license, how council tax is a scam, how VAT is a scam, how we're all sovereign citizens and we can opt out of society and there's nothing the government can do to touch us without our consent. And there are people going through the courts now because they stopped paying taxes as a result of the information like this. And you also see stuff like this. This is a QAnon post about how many thousands or hundreds of thousands of children go missing in the UK every day, and this is how easy it is for your child to be abducted. Here's your child, but a stranger, when you turn your back for a moment in public, can put a hat on them and throw a new T-shirt over them and put a tape over their mouth and put a mask on them, and you could be stood right next to your child and you'd never recognise. This is obvious nonsense, obvious fear-mongering. This does not happen. And yet this is here to spread the idea that more and more, 113,000 kids go missing. This is me saying 113,000 kids going missing in the UK sounds like a lot for a population of 70 million. That would be like, on average, 2 or 3 kids in every school go missing every year. Is that really true? And someone's going, yeah, it's true. All right, fair enough, it's true, I guess, yeah. But you can see with this one here, well, this is all just another reason why children shouldn't wear masks. So it's another reason why I was right about the other thing anyway. This ludicrous fantasy of fantastical idea of children being abducted in that kind of way is just proof that masks are evil as well. So I'm ticking 2 boxes there. One of the channels that would appear a lot in the various places and share around a lot, huge numbers, 143,000 subscribers, was this thing called COVID vaccine victims. This is one of the things I found quite disturbing, because how this worked was, if somebody people go off and find an obituary of someone who died, and they'd find that person's social media, and they just scroll back through their social media to see if they said they've been vaccinated. And if they've been vaccinated, that's proof that they died because of the vaccine. And so you'd see people sharing stories like this poor girl here who died, and people saying, well, I hope her parents are advising against getting this fucking poison now, and good riddance, and she should have learned lessons from history. All people gloating over the deaths of these people. But there's other people saying her aunt said she actually died of an overdose of drugs, nothing to do with COVID. So be careful on this one. And this gets posted, and then underneath there's still people saying, well, she got what she deserved. She should have been vaccinated. She's dead because of the vaccine. They don't care. It fits their narrative. They don't question it, even when people are saying this has nothing to do with that. If you died and you were vaccinated, you died because you were vaccinated, according to them. And these are the stories that get printed out onto A4 sheets and stuck to the windows of various events that anybody like Chris Whitty is attending, or put on stands in the middle of the street to prove to people how dangerous the vaccine is. But there's no evidence. They've not actually checked whether these people died as a result of the vaccine, because if they did, they'd find out they didn't die as of the vaccine, and that would undermine their narrative.
Or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's people who died in all sorts of different ways, unfortunately. It's really sad to see their stories used in that way. And I don't know how, I wouldn't want to even imagine being the family member who stumbles across the person that they've recently lost being used in that way. So I've said about this cross-posting thing. I think this cross-posting thing is incredibly important. I think it's an incredible, is the key component to how this online ecosystem has spread and gained such traction and gone so viral, because every one of those messages includes a link to the previous one. And once you click to the original channel, and when you click it, you can be subscribed to that channel immediately. And then before you know it, you're in so many channels that you can't keep up. You're constantly looking your way through stories, through channels. And you can see people here even complaining about how I keep having to delete some of the conversations in. I can't find the ones I'm doing. It's out of control. People saying that it's going to take me all day to go through them. People spending so much time in Telegram that they're losing themselves into it because of the way that the technology works to sort of build this echo chamber that's harder to get out of. And yeah, this is just a snapshot of some of the groups that I ended up in as a result of spending about a week or so in the Telegram in Telegram White Rose. So some of these things I added myself to, others I was added to automatically. But the more time you spend on Telegram, the more time that you're prone to being exposed to misinformation, especially from people who know full well that you're there and that you're already in one anti-vax channel, so they could try and get you into their idea if they just start saying the same stuff that you agree with. So they can radicalize you when they're bad actors. So, for example, this is a channel that would appear a huge amount of times in all the channels that I follow. British Nursing Alliance, who's run by this lady here. This is Kate Shemarani. You can see her across the various channels I'm in. She does talks around the country about how evil the vaccines are. Kate Shemarani was a name that I knew going into this investigation because she was a former nurse who she had breast cancer. She had chemotherapy, she had surgery, and then she had alternative medicine. And she said the fact that she recovered from cancer is down to the alternative medicine and not any of the medical care that she had. I would argue that looking at her story, it's far more likely that the conventional treatment she had cured her. But when I first came across her name, I was at a meeting of a Gerson practitioner. So Gerson therapy is a purported cancer cure where you eat nothing but fruit juices. You have a fruit smoothie every hour on the hour of your waking life, and you have 8 coffee enemas a day, and you take thousands and thousands of pounds worth of supplements. And it's a horrible regime to go through. It's also incredibly difficult to follow. And when you die as a result of the cancer, the practitioner said, well, that's because you weren't following it properly. You made a mistake in it, so it's your own fault. It's horrible stuff. But when I went to see a Gerson practitioner called Patrick Vickers, he had about 80 people in the room in Liverpool. More than 40 of them put their hands up and said that they currently had cancer. And then he went around the room and asked them what chemotherapy they were on and said, no, you need to stop taking that immediately or my thing won't work. You need to get off your chemotherapy. That drug won't work for you. Do this instead. And if you want to know how to do this, my partner, Kate, is a nurse, and she will facilitate you going to my clinic in northern Mexico and paying £30,000 for a week to learn how to do this. And that was Kate Shemirani at the time. She's suddenly become a major figure in the anti-vax movement. When there was a big march and a rally in London, she was the one who got up on stage and said, of the doctors and nurses who were giving out vaccines, she said, at the Nuremberg trials, the doctors and nurses stood trial and they hung. If you're a doctor or a nurse, now is the time to get off that bus. It's pretty clear what she's implying here, that when the day of reckoning comes, the doctors who vaccinated people will be up against the wall, essentially. And you can see here, this is a member of Patriotic Alternative, the far-right movement. They're flanking her as a bodyguard. They were attracted to her messaging for some reason. So Kate Shemirani appears and is incredibly prolific across those spaces, as is David Avocado Wolf, 97,000 subscribers on Telegram, but posts multiple times. It's just in one hour's gap of Sunday. Just all of these were David Avocado Wolf posts that appeared in the various places that I follow. Lots of them about COVID, lots of them about other things too. David Avocado Wolf is a notorious conspiracy theorist and alternative medicine practitioner who believes all manner of different things. He's got 97,000 followers on Telegram. He's got 11 million followers on Facebook right now, still. Now, he didn't get those by posting conspiracy theory memes. He got them by posting basically fluff pictures and inspirational quotes that your auntie might want to share, because that's how, you know, a live, laugh, love kind of quote. So, oh, that makes me feel good. I like the picture. I'm going to share that. And he accumulated large numbers of people. And then he sends those people to the various places where he says his more nefarious messaging. Messaging like the idea that vaccines are evil, that raw food diets detoxify the body and cure cancer, but they don't want you to know about it, that gravity is a toxin, that the world is flat, that COVID was man-made. And there's this one. This is his one on that I spotted on Telegram. You can see here you've got the Riddler from Batman saying, just like me, Batman, they're known for their pranks. They call you oppressor, but own all the banks. He's talking about Jews here. This is an anti-Semitic meme. The idea that the Jews are really in control of the world, they own all of the money, and yet they pretend they're oppressed. This is anti-Semitism being distributed to 97,000 people and all the people who clicked forward from here. And it's not the first touch of that we're going to get to tonight. But he doesn't post that stuff on Facebook. He uses Facebook as the recruitment to drive people to channels where he can do that. We get people like Mark Steele, who, again, very prolific across all these different places. He's got very emotive language, often quite violent rhetoric in all the things that he says. Now, Mark Steele, you know, he talks about the mass murder of children. It's not a vaccine, it's a biochemical weapon. Justice is coming, be the resistance. It's pretty clear what kind of rhetoric he's trying to ramp up there. Mark Steele is, again, someone that I knew going into this investigation because I interviewed him in 2018 when he was at the time trying to sue Gateshead Council for installing 5G lights into the streetlights, because he said that the 5G streetlights weren't just streetlights, they were actually weapons. That the New World Order were installing into Gateshead so they could beam energy rays at people and kill them. Gateshead denied being part of the New World Order. They also denied that the streetlights had any 5G in them. He'd misunderstood one of the documents about which generation of streetlight it was. It wasn't actually 5G at all. But Mark Steele, he claims he worked for the military as a weapons expert. There's no evidence of that at all. He did work as a bouncer in Gateshead, and he went to prison because he unloaded a weapon and injured a girl, and went to prison for years as a result in '93. I interviewed him in July 2021. He runs that Save Us Now anti-5G, anti-COVID thing that is incredibly, that appears constantly throughout all these different places. And I didn't know he ran it. I asked Save Us Now, do you want to do an interview? And just before the interview starts, Mark Steele responds and said, yeah, I'm the one you'd be speaking to. So I spoke to you 3 years ago, mate. I'm not sure there's much more I can say to you. But when we had a conversation, he said that, yeah, between COVID and 5G. So 5G is there to kill everyone, and COVID is just a cover as to why everyone's dying. So they're deliberately killing people with 5G, but then they released the story of COVID. So you think actually it wasn't the 5G, it was COVID, and that's why everyone's dying. And he told me in July that by the end of 2021, 70% of the population will be dead. After the end of 2021, when I said, well, he said nothing. He's never gone back on that, but he still continues to post stuff as if he wasn't wrong on a major claim like that. When I spoke to him, he said COVID is literally the work of literal Satan, the guy from the Bible with red horns. That's who he believes is behind all of this. Incredibly influential across all these spaces. But his rhetoric is incredibly inflammatory. You know, it says that we'll continue until we arrest the criminals behind the bioweapon. You're the resistance. You have here this guy, the top of the caption's cut off in the middle there, but it said, when you find the person who vaccinated your child without your consent, and if you play the video, it's a guy in paramilitary gear who walks happily, cheerily, doing a little dance and whistling as he goes into the kitchen, at which point you hear 2 gunshots. So that's what you do when you find the person who vaccinates your kid. You dress in paramilitary gear and you shoot them. And what does Mark say about that video? Well, it's certainly not good enough waiting until after the offence is committed. It's better to stop a murder before it happens. It's really clear that he's ramping up violent rhetoric here. Yeah, if you don't die of quickly of cancer, it's going to sterilise those who get it. You are the resistance. Save us now. And then you see posts from Tommy Robinson, who is, I think, the most prolific person across the places that I monitor in anti-vax spaces. And you see here across the various White Rose chats and Merseyside and Fight for Freedom, incredibly prolific there. And Tommy Robinson puts out a huge amount of anti-vax misinformation and vaccine paranoia, COVID paranoia. For anyone who doesn't know Tommy Robinson, his real name is Stephen Yaxley Lennon. He's a former leader of the English Defence League, former member of other far-right organisations. He's been convicted for fraud and assault in the UK. He's been convicted of immigration fraud in the US. He tried to disrupt a trial of a grooming gang in 20 by interviewing the jury on the way in, thus causing contempt of court, because he knew that if the trial did fall apart for contempt of court, he could go to all his followers. You see, you can't even prosecute paedophile gangs if they're Muslim. That was what he was trying to do there deliberately. And he posts hundreds of times a day, and you can see the type of things that he posts. This is in his channel there, so it's pretty clear what's going on. I gave this talk in Chelmsford last week, and an anti-vaxxer in the audience shouted at this point, Tommy Robinson is not right-wing. Tommy Robinson is left-wing, he's not right-wing. I don't know what they define as right-wing, but if you're posting swastikas and you're a member of the English Defence League, how much more right-wing does it get? I don't know. But he is incredibly prolific across these places. A lot of QAnon stuff. So you can see here, these are all QAnon accounts being forwarded into these spaces. QAnon fighters, QAnon, QAnon Plus. There's additional links here to really try and get people in, because they know that if they post COVID information, it's going to be shared into COVID anti-vax groups. And some of those people are going to click that link and they're going to go back and join that QAnon group. So they know that this is a recruitment tool. Tommy Robinson knows it. He knows every time he puts out statement about how the vaccine is evil, it comes with a link back to Tommy Robinson that some people will take. And once they're in his space, he can show them what he wants. He doesn't need everyone to be recruited, but he just knows that throw out enough stuff and you're going to gather enough people back. One of the groups that I'd see quite a lot, the first group that ever made me really concerned, the first time I logged into White Rose Merseyside, in fact, was this picture here, this lady from America talking about we shouldn't get the vaccine that manipulates your DNA. This is before the vaccine even existed, I believe. I forget the timing, I think it was. But it was from a group called Calling a Spade a Spade. And you can see there's a second link at the bottom to it. So I clicked that link, and the first thing I saw were these 2 posts. Beautifully said by this white beauty who loves her own race and knows that being proud of what we are doesn't mean we hate anyone else. You know, this white beauty who loves her own race. This guy saying, wake up, white people. The cost of diversity is destruction and the death of everything white. This is white supremacy. And I scanned a sticker at the end of my street to get the White Rose. I clicked a link into White Rose Merseyside, and I clicked the first link that I saw. And I was there being fed white supremacist misinformation instantly. This is really concerning, and there's a lot of this. And again, this is a group that gathers a large number of followers, not by being overt in their white supremacy all the time. So sometimes they just post pictures of a cow lying down with, is that a dog or I think it's like a puppy. It's hard to tell from that angle. It's like a puppy or a lamb, but like cute animals together. This is cute animals being fed to you by white supremacists to try and get you to follow their channel. Maybe follow me for your cute animal news and why we are the superior race. That's what they're trying to say here. But once you're in there, you see some pretty horrible stuff. Like this thing, I think is quite. This one on the right here, I think is not quite as. It doesn't seem as sinister as it actually is. So you can see here, there's this Aryan-looking lady in Christian nationalist knight armor, bowing down with where we go one, we go all across it, the QAnon phrase, and God let me at them, I'll take them out. This is white Christian nationalism. The idea that America, where this was from, is a white Christian nation, and anybody who isn't part of those two groups does not deserve to be here. Let me at them, I'll take them out. That's what this is saying. Here's CNN is saying that white nationalism is the single biggest threat to this country, whereas white nationalists today are just fishing and camping with their family. White nationalists are the good guys here, is what it's saying. And any white nationalist who doesn't want to raise doesn't want as many white kids as he can raise is a fed, is a cop, is what they're saying here. It's overt white nationalist material. A couple of clicks away from where I started on the lamppost. And not everyone is going to fall for this. Not everyone's going to follow down this rabbit hole, but enough people are going to be exposed to this stuff. And the constant drip feeding this stuff has an effect over time that you don't even necessarily realize is happening, but it does happen. I can tell you why in a moment that I know that's true. I will finish up soon. There's a little bit more. But you can see in the same thing, this is probably the worst slide that I've got, so I won't stay on it for very long. But you can see on the right-hand side here, it's pretty clear what they're saying, that all the white women are in the abortion clinic, whereas people of colour already have kids and they're in a maternity clinic. It's saying that that white people are going to be outbred. This is the argument this is trying to make. This is the great replacement conspiracy theory. The idea that immigrants are being deliberately brought to this country to displace white people because they can therefore be more controlled. And it's saying the British are going to become a minority in their own country. It's horrible, really horrible stuff. And it is right there being fed to people on a constant basis. And it's not just against immigrants or people of colour. There's a lot of anti-Semitism too. So you see this picture on the right about Loxism. Loxism is the hatred that Jewish people have for white people, and it's the worst form of racism there is. But you never hear about it on the media. That's the message here. Well, why don't you hear about it on the media? You're led to ask. Who controls the media? You're led to ask. Obviously, it's nonsense. This middle one here about Rabbi Nahum Rabinovich. This rabbi does not exist. He was invented by someone from the KKK in a piece of propaganda. So they said, oh, there's a rabbi who said this thing here about how white people deserve anything that comes to them. Deserve all they get. So this is KKK propaganda being repeated here. And the effect of that, well, we see people talking about things like, the genocide of the Jews. Even if you believe that's true, the White Rose went around at the time. The White Rose weren't opposing genocide. They were opposing identity politics. And someone's saying, well, actually, I think this guy who's questioning the genocide of the Jews, he's a breath of fresh air in this group. He was getting too stuffy and insular. You need to shake people out of their trance because the portrayal of Hitler is heavily politicized by Western media. Can we stop politicizing Hitler? Can we just let Hitlers be Hitlers without having to politicize them? And how do people respond to that? The admin is responding, let's not get into another Holocaust debate, people. We're here to oppose fascism. Well, that is fascism. That is Holocaust denial is fascism. But you see this great replacement stuff everywhere. The idea that there is a secret power and control of the world who are of Jewish descent, and they are deliberately diluting the white race by bringing in immigrants. You see this constantly in the White Rose. And because it appears not just in those posts of like horrible memes, but in just conversation that people are having. There's people having these conversations who a year ago weren't having these conversations, but they spent a year in the White Rose being subjected to this kind of misinformation, and the drip feeding of that warps your perspective on things, especially if this is your main source of socialization, your main source of community. If this is coming from Tony, who you normally talk to about the football, but sometimes he talks about how the genocide of the Jews didn't happen. He's not a bad guy. I know Tony, therefore. That's kind of what the point of this is. I forgot that people were watching that. I thought that was a dog. That was huge. So yeah, we see this kind of stuff absolutely everywhere. So what have I learned from all of this to get to this quite down point? Well, I think I've learned a few things from this. There's a huge amount of confusion. COVID confused all of us. Our lives suddenly changed in ways that we didn't see coming and we couldn't understand, and we all became uncertain and we didn't know what to do. And for some people, their response to that was to turn to very black and white thinking, was to turn to a sense of agency. Well, there are bad guys out there. This whole thing isn't true, so I don't have to shut down my gym. I don't have to lose my livelihood. I can carry on as if nothing was wrong, and I can be the defiant person who's standing up to fascism along the way. Conspiracy theory offers people this sense of agency and action. As I said before, it's really dissatisfying when someone says to you, your life is going to pause for a while. It's going to be horrible for a little bit. And the best thing you can do is go home and do nothing. is to sit on your hands and stay home and don't see your friends. That's not satisfying. It doesn't feel like it's that you've got control over your life. So you can grasp control by inserting agency back in. I don't have to stay home. I can be my own person. I can stand up to the tyranny because it's not real anyway. So I don't have to worry about it, is what they'll think. All of the arguments in the White Rose were pitched at a common sense gut level. They weren't pitched in terms of reason and rationale. They were designed to play into fears and insecurities and to not be thought about too much afterwards, which is why so many of their messages are so contradictory. The virus isn't real. Well, it is real, but actually masks are bad. Well, actually masks might work, but the vaccine is bad. All these things sit comfortably side by side because it's not about creating a coherent worldview. It's about finding the pressure points, the points where we're most vulnerable in our fears and our concerns. And I genuinely, fundamentally believe that anti-vaxxers aren't generally fascist or right-wing. I really do believe that. I believe they're just people who are confused by a lot of things, who are trying to make a way and are coming to the wrong conclusions. And I don't believe that they're all fascist or right-wing at all. But I think there are a lot of fascists and right-wing people and racists who know that there are people there who could be recruited. You know, not necessarily one message, but 100 messages or 1,000 messages. Eventually, over time, you're going to sway people. And I think that is a real thing to be concerned about. And the rhetoric is often frequently violent. It's often taking a stand and standing up, and these oppressors and the people who are murderers, Nuremberg trials, talk about violence. You know, we have this person here saying, Tim the COVID warrior, who would post quite often in the White Rose, stuff like this. When your government is trying to kill you, the best way to stop them is to kill them first. The longer we leave it, the higher the death toll. This was from a sticker on a lamppost at the end of my street, 2 or 3 clicks away, and I'm seeing this kind of stuff. And I went into this stuff knowing that it was wrong, knowing that it was untrue, and knowing that I wasn't going to be swayed by this because I was investigating it. For people who were genuinely interested, it's much harder to know where their boundaries were. How many people stepped over those lines into some quite murky territory? I don't know. But the thing is, all this rhetoric, a lot of it, they'll say, this is just talk. This guy's never going to do anything. He's just all mouth. But it's always just talk until it isn't just talk anymore. And after that point, it's, well, how didn't we see this coming? Why couldn't we stop this? Where did this come from? Why didn't we anticipate this? So it's really important we pay attention to this, because this is radicalization that's happening literally on our doorsteps, and it's deserving of our attention. So I would normally, the first few times I gave this talk, that was the ending, which is really depressing. It's really, really grim. And I felt bad leaving people on such a grim ending, but it was kind of how I was feeling. It's like I could see this kind of escalation or this de-escalation. It was getting worse and worse. But I think there is some positivity. Did I press the button to do that, or? Oh, I must have pressed the, I didn't know that I had that button. Okay, there is some positivity, because I gave this talk for Skeptics in the Pub online. I don't know if anybody here has seen Skeptics in the Pub online, but every week during the pandemic, they put out a skeptical talk online for free that people could just tune into on their computers. I was involved in it, other people were too. It's now every month, and they're going to be carrying on for people who can't get to a local kind of skeptics group or humanist group. But I gave this talk in November 2011, and so they advertised it on Facebook and Twitter and Reddit, and in one of those places, someone from the White Rose must have come across it, because soon after it went up, I got messages in my White Rose chat saying, Michael Marshall here is a journalist who's infiltrating, and we shouldn't believe him. And I got a little bit worried, because it turns out they had my address as well, which I gave to them, which I should not have done. In the end, it was fine, but I was quite worried because the amount of violent stuff that I see in there, I thought, God, what are they going to do to people they disagree with? In the end, they kind of just kicked me out. But as a result of that, one of the admins of the global White Rose and the admin of the local White Rose in Merseyside, he got in touch with me to say, all right, now we know who you are. What have you got to say for yourself? You've been here the entire time you've been watching us. Why? Tell us about it. And I said, well, whenever I've contributed, I've not lied. I've never said I wasn't. I've just not told you who I was. And I've not misrepresented myself. I've not tried to ramp anything up. And when I've messaged, I've actually been pushing back on some stuff because I'm just genuinely interested here. And he was explaining to me that he spends all of his time kicking out the Nazis and things. He does a lot of work kicking out Nazis. Like, he spends all of his day kicking out like accounts that are from Nazis. And I thought, do you know how many times a day I have to spend kicking out Nazis from my Merseyside Skeptics group? None, because the Nazis don't want to be there. So what is it about your group that's attracting Nazis, mate? But so I said, look, I've got genuine concerns. If you really want to hear me out, come and see this talk online in November 2021. And he watched that talk, and he messaged me afterwards and said, I didn't see it, but now I can understand. Like, I was too busy with the individual messages that I missed the bigger picture of the people that I knew going into this, that I first met in 2020. By 2021, they spent a year and a half, and I could see them getting worse and worse, but I discounted it. Like, they'd say more and more racist things, but I discounted it because I knew them by this point, and that's just Steve, and he does that. but I can see that actually he has been getting worse and people are being radicalized. And I spent all my time kicking out the fake accounts and the bot accounts and the Nazis and the scammers, that I missed what was happening to the real people who I'd come to know along the way. And so as a result of that, not only did he leave the White Rose, he gave interviews about why he left the White Rose, this guy called Louis. And he talked about what got him into the White Rose in the first place, about how he was working as a night porter or a night watchman at a building. It was very boring most of the time. He had nothing to do. He had insomnia chronically at the time. And so he spent all of his time online. He started at YouTube and he went to other places, and before he knew, he was in Telegram. And everyone he knew was in those spaces now. And he wasn't in the best of places. We all had problems at the start of the pandemic. And he just got more and more sucked into these kind of things. But actually, he now could understand that it's not true. And he said one of the reasons he got out was kind of talking to me about things like data. So he'd say, well, what about this ONS data that says this about deaths? And I said, well, actually, here's the context of that data. Go in and have a check on it. And he did. And he was like, yeah, you're right, actually. And so he left completely. He now attends Merseyside Skeptics events. He's like one of our local groups, a really lovely fella, a friend of mine. And I want to end with the thing that he said, because I think it's a really useful comment that he left beneath this article in an local paper in Liverpool. He said, please be more kind to each other and try to understand the other side, even when you disagree with what they believe in, even if you find it totally illogical. It's okay to disagree, but always remember they are human too. Also be mindful that there's a hidden pandemic, which is the pandemic of mental illness, which affects people in both camps. The year 2020 really devastated many people's mental health, and that's led to the point we're at. He said, the catalyst to me changing my mind on some of these issues didn't stem from people hurling abuse and vitriol my way. And through the activism that I did, I endured quite a bit of that. No, I changed my mind because of compassionate and understanding people who parlayed with me in such a kind manner, regardless of their disagreements with my stance at the time. So remembering that the people we disagree with are human and that they're even reachable if we treat them with respect can actually lead to places that are quite good and can help people back out of the rabbit hole. And that's the reason I'm involved in Skepticism, to try and help people out a bit more. So that is the positive ending to that talk, which did not think it was, might not have thought it was coming. Thank you. I hope you've enjoyed that, and I'll happily take any questions and things. But yeah.
I promised I would try and do. So